I don't know what's going to be said in the next few days about John McCain, by whomever it's going to be said. I don't know what's going to be done. But anybody who, in any way, tarnishes the reputation of John McCain deserves a whipping. Because most of the ones who would do the wrong thing about John McCain didn't have the guts to do the right thing when it was their turn.
That was Republican Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia with perhaps a message to the president. Well, good morning and welcome to Morning Joe on this Tuesday, August the 28th. With us we have this morning MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle. We've got Associate Editor of Commentary Magazine Noah Rothman, NBC News National Political Editor Heidi Przybyla, columnist and Associate Editor for The Washington Post David Ignatius, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and Associate Editor of The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson, and we have Washington anchor for BBC World News America, Katty Kay. So we got the funeral details for John McCain. They were announced yesterday, and while his office released a letter from the late senator, which reads in part this: "My fellow Americans, thank you for the privilege of serving you and for the rewarding life that service in uniform and public office has allowed me to lead. I have tried to serve our country honorably. I have made mistakes, but I hope my love for America will be weighed favorably against them. I lived and died a proud American. We are citizens of the world's greatest republic, a nation of ideals, not blood and soil. We are blessed and are a blessing to humanity when we uphold and advance those ideas at home and in the world. We helped liberate more people from tyranny and poverty than ever before in history. We weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all corners of the globe. We weaken it when we hide behind walls rather than tear them down, when we doubt the power of our ideals rather than trust them to be the great force for change they've always been. We have always had so much more in common with each other in disagreement. If only we remember that and give each other the benefit of the presumption that we all love our country, we will get through these challenging times. We will come through them stronger than before. We always do. Do not despair of our present difficulties, but believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history. Farewell, fellow Americans. God bless you, and God bless America." David Ignatius, what a wonderful, what a strong, what a timely message from a man who has dominated American political life for 30, 40 years and will surely influence Americans and those who seek to serve in public for many more years to come.
Joe, John McCain's final statement, which you just read very movingly, is a soldier's statement to his country. It's striking, the belief he had to his very last day that the country could solve its problems if only it could escape this bitter partisanship that through John McCain's last several decades became more and more of a problem. I was always struck with McCain in every encounter I had with him, and listening just now to you read that last statement, how much John McCain believed that American values were our greatest source of strength. And that's not just a line in a speech. He really believed it. He thought that when we were Americans, when we represented these values of freedom, the whole world caught fire and moved in our direction. He'd watched the Cold War, he'd watched our successes, and I think it was just a bitter disappointment to him to see a person who we thought had really low moral values, not a strong character, as leader, not just because of the bitter fights that he had with Donald Trump, but because he thought that quality, that lack of moral character, weakened the country. And it's interesting that that's how, Joe, he chose to say goodbye to all of us, to remind us of the importance of character.
Right. It really is. And Mike Barnicle, I was struck when we heard the news of Senator McCain's passing, the despair that I saw in Mika's face and the despair she felt the rest of the day. And here was obviously a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, who never voted for Republicans, certainly didn't vote for John McCain. They clashed from time to time, as Senator McCain clashed with me and clashed with quite a few people because he was a tough fighter. God bless him for that. But the one thing that I think Mika noticed, even as a liberal Democrat, was the greatness of the man, the greatness of the leadership. She saw something in him that she saw in her father, that she saw in other presidents and diplomats that she had crossed in her life. And Mika just knew that somebody great had left our presence. And my God, anyone that feels a sense of despair only need to read John McCain's final words to understand not only why he was so great, but why America's greatest days really could lie ahead if we only get out of our way, our own way.
Well, Joe, John McCain would be the last person who would want anyone to despair today. And I think maybe what Mika saw and what she thought whenever she saw or heard John McCain was quite simple. She saw America, and she saw an American, and she saw someone whose life story symbolizes, in a sense, what this country is all about. His history is our history. We don't teach our history very well to our children or to one another, but his history is fairly familiar now, given his passing. And his history is one of continued survival in the face of unbelievable obstacles. 5.5 years. I've stood in the cell where he spent most of those 5.5 years in Hanoi. And it's not a comfortable feeling all the years later when I stood in it. And it's abhorrent to think of any human being being treated the way he was treated. I think I mentioned yesterday, he once told me when I asked him that he once went 3 months without seeing the sun because he was held in solitary confinement. Right. And he once went nearly 5 months without seeing the moon. Think about that, and think about his resilience. That's the United States of America. Our resilience as a republic in overcoming all sorts of historical obstacles. That's John McCain.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.